Now let's talk a little bit about the community. Okay, what do we know about the community? By the way, if you're interested in reading Dead Sea Scrolls, these are two Dead Sea Scrolls books that I use in my classes and are used regularly by people who want to get access to the Dead Sea Scrolls in English. On the left, you have Geza Vermesh, the complete Dead Sea Scrolls in English. And on the right, you have the Dead Sea Scrolls translated into English by both well-known Dead Sea Scrolls scholars, Geza Vermesh on the left and Florentino Garcia Martinez on the right. These are easily accessible. The Penguin Classics one is the most affordable. And this is the one that I use in my classes in person. Okay. Before sort of talking about what the community beliefs are and their structure and so on and so forth, let's first deal with where we get our information. So a lot of our information regarding the Dead Sea community, that is that community that we are saying existed partly, at least, at the site of Khirbet Qumran for a period of time, are these documents here. There are a couple of others, but these are the most important ones. The community rule, 1QS, which tells us about the community structure. The name Yachad is used over and over again. The Damascus document, we'll talk about that in a moment as we make our way through. The Thanksgiving hymns. Thanksgiving hymns are one of the first scrolls to be found, and they are scrolls that sound very much like the Psalms, except they have a very particular theology. The Khirbet Qumran Dead Sea Scrolls fantasy of the war of their group against everyone else and how God is going to vindicate them is called the Scroll of the War between the Sons of Light and Darkness. And then we have Pesharim texts, which are interpretations of biblical books, and those are unique to the Dead Sea community. Now, here is the system on the right-hand side. I said 1QS, 1QH, 1QM, and you're like, what language is that? This is the documentary system that's used for scrolls that are found in the Dead Sea. 1 equals the cave number, so 1QS, 1QH, 1QM, found in cave 1. Q means it's found in the 11 caves that are associated with Qumran. In this case, S or H or M is an abbreviation of the scholarly name given to that text. So the first name given in Hebrew to the community rule was Serach Hayachad, which Serach Hayachad means the community rule. So S became sort of the way that we understand it. The Damascus document, because the most complete form we have of it is the medieval document that's found in Cairo and not in a cave. It's CD, which stands for Cairo Damascus. In other words, the Cairo Damascus document. In terms of the community origins, they seem to develop at a time where we have what used to be called factionalism, where we have groups being sort of unfolding. This is about 140 years before the birth of Jesus. And in that time, Josephus tells us here, I've given you the Josephus text, so I won't read it, that we have at least 3 groups, and that all those 3 groups are concerned with human action. We have the Pharisees, we have the Sadducees, we have the Essenes. If you remember last week, I told you that the New Testament is inviting you into a larger conversation. And we don't have any Pharisees, Sadducees, or Essenes in the Hebrew Bible or the Old Testament. These groups develop essentially in a time period that if you read the New Testament, Old Testament, if you read the Bible, you won't find out where they came from. You will just see them in the New Testament, and they will be already accepted as a well-known group and a group that they socially interact with. The group we think that represents the Yachad, which Josephus does not mention or may mention, we'll talk about that in a moment, is one that develops, at least from what we can tell archaeologically, around the same time, give or take. Okay, give or take 20, 30 years. But essentially in ancient time, that's very close. That's closer than not, right? They may have developed from a priestly group. The reason, this is the argument of one scholar, and full disclosure, it's my PhD advisor, who says that when you look at the laws that the community decides to follow and sort of make part of their community, we see that they are in later Jewish literature that they are attributed to Sadducees. So he thinks that there's an argument as a result of this text called Some Works of the Law, where they tell the people of Qumran, basically tell the people, the person they're writing to, you guys are not following the laws correctly, that this is initially begins as a priestly group that splits off of the Jerusalem priests. We think this because they refer to themselves as the Bnei Tzadok, the sons of Zadok, and they frequently mention Aaron and being connected to Aaron. Tzadok, of course, is the priest in the days of David in the Old Testament, and the high priest in the days of Solomon. So they have a priestly affiliation. This is their communal structure. I've given you here where the CD communal according to the Damascus document. Now, the reason for doing this is that any place where there is a social group that exists for more than 100 years in a place, there is an evolution over time to that group. One text may have a different communal structure than another text. And here we have the same thing. Damascus document gives these 3 points: that they're a cohesive group called the Rabim, which means the many, and they have an overseer and a priest. Local communities have at least 10 members, each headed by a priest, and then there's a centralized organization of local communities called camps. We'll come back to that as well. The community rule, 1QS, tells us that the people the people who become part of the community, the repentant of Israel, as they call them, should separate themselves from the world of perverse men. And we can have a conversation about at some point about what that means to separate. They have an overseer that refers to themselves as the sons of Tzadok, which is likely the priestly leaders. And then this group and the rest of the community make a decision on all matters of law and judgment according to the Dead Sea Scrolls, according to 1QS, the community. Becoming a member usually takes 2 years, and there is, that's a typo. It's not press of admission. It's process of admission. And they are expected to accept the covenant that has been made. And they are also expected to be checked periodically for spiritual qualities. They are to participate in the various rites and rules of the community, praying a certain amount of times, ritual immersion a certain amount of times, and respect. Now, all of these versions have a penal code, which means that there is a set of rules, a set of commandments that you must follow. And if you don't follow the way the community is interpreted, there are punishments that are doled out for these individuals, including the taking away of food, the kicking out of the community, all these various penalizations, punishments that we have for various infractions. So there is, for instance, if a person takes God's name in vain, and there's a specific way of doing that according to the Dead Sea Scrolls, you are kicked out of the community and never can you return. A little more about community origins. This is other ideas as to community origins. They develop from a group of repentant Israelites who believe that they have been called to make a way in the desert. Isaiah 40 verse 3, which is why there's some conversation between John the Baptist that we'll talk about next week. And then you have just, I reduplicated here, that they may have developed from a priestly group. Here are some of the beliefs. They believe that they've been given access to what's called in Hebrew the Nigla. The Nigla is that is revealed, and that everyone else outside the community has access only. Well, they don't have access. They have access to the commandments, but they don't have access to the true interpretation of the commandments, because what they get access to is something that is hidden. For the Qumranites, for the people of the Dead Sea, they believe that their teacher of righteousness, quote unquote, has received the true interpretation of the commandments. In other words, how they're going to live out these commandments, and that they are given access to be part of this chosen community who has separated themselves out from the desert, live at Kirbet Qumran, and participate in various things that are they're doing it as if they are functioning in the temple. Because remember, they're the sons of Tzadok. They have priestly association. Most important to the community, which is